All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the Erie City Environmental Advisory Council. Let the record show that's 3 o'clock. We'll begin with roll call. Campbell. Here. Howden. Absent. Kerr.
Here.
Lupo. Mason.
Here.
Puz is here. And Teffer is absent.
I think Bob is walking in as we start.
Yes, I do see
going
that.
through
Yeah.
security.
So we'll give him a moment.
Oh, and we have 2 guests besides myself and Jenny. Yes. Porter and Kathy are here to talk about the P4P. Hey, Kathy. Hi, Porter.
Well, the other screen.
Yeah. Barely. We'll wait for our, is our
Yeah.
guy coming back? Bob, that's your chair.
All right. Hey, Bob.
Yeah, don't fall off the stage.
Jeez.
All right, moving on. Approval of the April 2024 meeting minutes. We have any corrections?
Edits, changes, additions.
Hearing none, you have a motion?
I'll
Or do you have a,
provide a motion to pass the minutes.
The second engine.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. Next item on the agenda, amendments to the agenda. Do we have any amendments to the agenda this afternoon? Hearing none, we'll close that. Next up, public comment. Do we have any members of the public here to speak today? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public comment portion. Up next, old business. First item on the old business is the P4P agenda and survey for public listening sessions with Porter Stevens and Kathy Rostak.
Well, it's great to be back before the EAC. Certainly excited to give you an update on where we stand with the Partners for Place project, and certainly welcome the opportunity to hear some of your feedback on some of the materials we've assembled for the project. Just to give you a very brief update on where we are. I think last time we were before you, we had, this interesting mirror effect.
They can still see you. Yeah. How it's presented.
Let's look over here. We had kind of arrived at a very broad concept of what we wanted to use the mini grant funding for, which was developing a partnership between city departments, local nonprofits, especially those that are focusing on environmental and climate change issues, and also residents, neighborhoods that are being most impacted, disproportionately impacted by environmental impacts. After we last talked with you, we made some great progress towards really arriving at kind of a more attainable project that we're now moving forward with. And what we arrived at is we're collaborating with organizations across the city to set up a series of public listening sessions where our partner organizations will be really leading the charge to connect with residents and lead them through a couple of activities that we're creating materials for to hear what issues are impacting their neighborhoods, their communities, and getting their feedback on what are some of the priorities that the city of Erie should be focusing on when it comes to addressing those issues. And really, we have 2 main goals here. We want to really set up the infrastructure for making meaningful connections with some of these communities that will be beneficial to this project in the short term, but also will serve as the starting point for the community engagement portion of what we hope will become the city's local climate action plan, which we very much hope to pursue as sort of a phase 2 part of the Partners for Place project. But also hear directly from residents and get a sense of, what are some of the issues that rise to the top when we speak to them, which will be really helpful guide for us, again, going into the local climate action plan, or what are some of the things we should start to focus on when we start digging into data looking at the information that's out there, collecting more information. It'll really be helpful to kind of give us a starting point to look at some of the issues that are having the biggest impact on local residents. And we're really excited that we've gotten, we spent some time connecting with organizations around the city, had a meeting with them in mid-April to introduce them to the project, hear their any questions or concerns, and see if they'd be interested in participating. And we feel really lucky that I think we're up to, 9 organizations that are committed to holding a public listening session as part of the project, and which include the LEAF, Lake Erie Arboretum, the Inner City Neighborhood Art House, the City of Erie Office for the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants, the Pennsylvania Lake Erie Watershed Association, the Build Community Development Corporation, that's part of Hammett Health, Bike Erie, and the Erie Neighborhood Growth Partnership. We're also right now, we're talking with the neighborhood office and the and CRANE, the Community Resilience Action Network, to see what kind of support we can provide for organizations who are putting on the public listening sessions, be it help with connecting with residents or even providing some additional staff and resource support when they're actually holding some of these public engagement activities. So we're really excited that we've gotten such a great response, and we certainly look forward to moving forward and starting to really actually get into the work of connecting with Erie residents. And to do that, we've created some of the documents that we'd like to speak with you today about, starting with what we're calling a mock agenda. So we created a template for an agenda. And actually, does anyone have a copy, or would it be better for me to share my screen so you can see it on my desktop?
We all have copies in our
Great,
packets.
okay. And really what the purpose of this is to provide kind of a basic organization of what we want to see occur at each listening session. And I think it's important to point out that we are emphasizing to communities, that the organizations that partner with us, that this is really just sort of a guide, where ultimately, they know their residents the best, they know their communities the best, and we certainly want them to engage with them in a way that is meaningful and is ultimately comfortable for the residents that they're wanting to connect with. So we want to give them some flexibility to design the listening session or public engagement activity that works best. Like, for example, Build, in recent conversations we've had with them, they're thinking it's better to actually have a booth at a upcoming health fair where they can have a stack of some of the surveys that we're also going to be discussing, other outreach materials, interact with the community in that way, because they know that's the way they work best, and that's the way they can most effectively connect with residents to get the feedback that we're looking for, just to give an example. But we certainly at least want to have them include some of these elements. So just to briefly go through the agenda, we want, of course, to have some standard meeting topics like introducing everybody, having introductions so everyone knows who everyone is. We want them to spend some time speaking to residents about the purpose of this listening session, so give a very brief background on the P4P project, why they're there conducting that activity, and kind of some of the goals they want to accomplish with connecting with residents. Then we'd like them to move into a facilitated discussion. Think of people giving questions and comments while someone has like a flip chart and writing notes on it, that kind of activity. And a discussion that really touches on 2 big questions, which is what are the major issues impacting your community's quality of life, or your quality of life in your neighborhood, and what are some of the priorities that the city should priorities that the city should focus on to address some of those impacts. And it could be anything. It could be air quality, could be outdated water infrastructure that's impacting the quality of your drinking water, could be stormwater, could be more parks and trees in your neighborhood. We've given a couple topics that they can potentially choose from, though. Again, we want to set some broad guardrails, but we don't want to potentially suffocate the conversation. We want citizens to feel like they can share what's impacting them. So, but we at least want to have those 2 points discussed in some level. Then after that, we would ask them to have participants complete the survey, which we would have paper copies available, and they would complete the survey there in the meeting and then hand them back to the facilitator. And then we would leave a couple minutes for any wrap-ups, questions. The facilitator would share a few points of what we would hope to accomplish with the feedback that we've gotten, some of the next steps. Keep an eye out for future opportunities to engage with this project and with the city and other projects that have environmental climate change focus. And as you may have seen in the survey, we also gave an opportunity for people taking the survey to put in their email address, potentially other contact information, if they want to be kept in the loop about what's going on with this project. So wanted to share that with you and see, were there any, at least for this mock agenda, were there any major components, and we're just looking for some feedback, if there's any major components of what we're trying to accomplish with these listening sessions that are missing, like any types of activities, any major topics that would be important to, I think, get some good feedback on environmental issues in the city that you're not seeing here. So certainly I'll open the floor, and I'd love to hear any reactions you've had to this.
Well, in terms of the template, when I looked at that third section, environmental issues and priorities discussion, I would try to think of some way that it can be a little interactive, because 30 minutes is a long time. And I'm not quite sure what that is. I know when we do this at the Art House, we're going to actually try to couple it with some kind of an activity. I don't know exactly what that's going to be. We may even do it as part of one of our second Saturdays. Every second Saturday we have activities at the Art House. We might make this a piece of it, but trying to have it as part of something where we'd have other people coming in. But I think during that, the agenda template, there has to be something interactive with folks when you're doing the issues and priorities.
Sister Pat, here. I just wanted a clarifying question. You said you wanted a more interactive, that you did that to help for conversation.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Kathy, you're breaking up.
Did you have a suggestion, or have you tried different things?
I don't know if this, Sarah Everett from the Art House is doing this with me, and we were waiting to hear more information from you before we decided exactly what we were going to try to do. So no, we haven't come up with anything.
Directions.
Could you hear that, Kathy?
No, maybe
No.
speaking to that microphone.
So she was saying that they haven't kind of figured anything out as of yet because they were waiting to hear back from you guys.
Okay.
So they're still kind of in the thought stage. But I think Sister Pat was just kind of giving advice that it should be interactive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Did you? We don't want to. Maybe there's ways we can make suggestions, and then the sprint line partner can choose which one they want to deploy based on their capacity or their comfort level.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Could absolutely do that.
Pamela, were you going to say something?
I was just going to ask Kathy if she heard Pat say they were going to try to come up with an activity for the discussion, some sort of, to make it more
I didn't hear that, sir. I'm sorry. Say that again.
Is you try to say to him,
Well, what we're going to do as part of, I guess as an add-on to this agenda, is have some kind of an activity that's going to draw people to come, and then we will do this as a piece of what we're doing.
did you hear her that time, Kathy?
Yeah, I heard that.
Okay, she moved her microphone closer. It might not have been close
Yes,
enough.
that was helpful.
Or
Are we talking about the survey also?
I think we're going to get to
Yes, we are. We wanted to get the mock agenda to see if there's anything missing. I think that was a good add-on. If no one has any other questions, we can move on to the survey. And the survey has had a number of iterations with input from the advisory committee and lots of emails back and forth. So That's what has produced what you have in front of you today. So if you have any, and I think, Porter, unless you wanted to go line by line, we'll just open it up for any outstanding questions or comments you wanted to make on the survey.
It's important to note the survey is still in draft form. It doesn't say draft on here, but it's a draft. So this isn't the final version. We would want people to be handed out. Yeah.
No, we are meeting with the advisory committee tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, and we would try to finalize it by then, which is why we're in front of you today. Yeah, with it.
Well, right up front, I would say make the print larger.
Make the print larger.
Yes, yes. I mean, we're going to have people that are struggling readers, and I think the print's a little bit larger. That kind of makes it a little easier.
Well, Sister Pat, you're going to have people like me who need larger font. So.
I wondered why in number 4, if improved lighting could be added. I know that's what people are going to want to talk about. Or did you want to leave that off because you don't want to deal with it?
We were trying to focus on the 9 or I think it's 10 now priorities that were developed, getting questions, answering or asking questions that would help inform those 10 priorities. I don't know. I think that mostly those have been shared with EAC. I don't know if they have.
The list of 10 priorities, I don't think we have that to look at, do we?
We
Is
don't
it in
have
your
it. It's
handout?
from the last, we had it at the last meeting.
Oh.
Yeah, Sarah, the advisory committee has seen it. I don't call it the EAC. It's 10 now because we added clean water.
It was at the EAC last time too.
Yeah, we had
Yeah.
it.
Okay, all right.
Great.
So they were, I don't know why we're getting feedback sometimes, but yeah, so they were trying to focus on things that
Right.
were on here, which water quality has been added, hence it's 10 instead of 9.
I don't want to be the only one talking, but in number 6, the choice B says source clean energy sources. I think that,
Too many sources?
That was, that was confusing. I
Yeah.
think let me see. Yeah, we need a different one.
yeah, I
Is
think
it
that wording has to be
identify or
worked on.
Maybe identify,
Yeah, that
Or
would be better.
use,
Or use.
use clean energy sources instead.
And C, I would give a few examples because folks may not identify right away sustainable building materials.
for which question?
The same question, C,
Number C instead
Oh.
of,
encourage the use of sustainable building materials in new
Like,
construction.
such as?
Yeah.
And some of the questions perhaps like, back to number 4, which Pat mentioned earlier about possibly adding lighting, maybe you could just add other, none or other, and if there's something people want to write in, they could write it in. Whatever question that was. And I don't like, I personally, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if we want to let people say, no, I am not interested. It might be better to say, I think we should give them the option to say, I don't know enough about this topic. Because
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
some people might not know enough about the topic to have an opinion one way or the other, and it's not that they're not interested, it's that they don't know about it. They don't know enough about it, I mean.
Yeah, that's a good point. That was my addition, Sarah, just because I thought if people are genuinely just not interested, perhaps they showed up for some other reason. We wanted to know that as well.
Yeah.
Doubtful, but we can.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Okay.
okay. I know Jackie commented to me that she didn't like it, but I mean, I agree, though, some people might not be interested in anything, and I guess it's still good to know. I don't know, because that won't be useful to our plan, is what she was thinking. So if it's not useful to the plan, what then
But it's interesting to know if somebody says they're not interested in buildings and energy
that's true.
efficiency, but they are interested in mobility, because you have that question
Yeah.
repeated for every topic.
Right, we have that for all
And
of
so it's like,
Oh,
what are
okay.
people kind of interested in,
Yeah,
you know?
there.
yeah, it didn't bother me as much, but I think what's missing is the choice to say I don't know enough about the topic. Because even when I'm taking a survey, sometimes I don't know what they're talking about, and then I get mad because there's no option for me. I also get upset because people use so many acronyms. Sometimes the entire thing will be all acronyms, and then you don't even know what it's about. I'm like, can you write it out somewhere?
Real words.
I don't think we have that problem, though.
No,
No, there's no, I don't think there's any acronyms here.
And I just had one other comment, 14, where we're talking about food systems. E says grocery stores that stay open longer. In most places, it's grocery stores in the vicinity. There aren't any grocery
Yeah.
stores. So it's not the fact that they're staying open, it's the fact that there aren't any. I mean, if
Yeah, that's
you're
true.
getting groceries from Country Fair
Yeah.
or from CVS or.
Yeah.
because
That's
there's
why I
not-
think we need
Or-
other as an option, because
Yeah.
I don't know that we can always think up every possible answer if we just have other.
Yeah.
Unless you want that as a specific option, that there are none.
I think that should be one of the options, because most of Erie is a food desert,
Right.
you know, so most of Erie is not within 1 mile of a grocery store. So I think that that's important.
So it would be like having one closer to where I live.
Yeah, so having a grocery store.
So my understanding that the comment is replace grocery stores that stay open longer with adding more grocery stores, something to that effect?
Or add another option.
Or just say,
Okay.
I don't know if it can just be a different, an additional option that just says more grocery stores.
Gotcha.
And then you could also have an option that says grocery stores that stay open longer. Although I have to say that in the city of Erie, it's not the length of time that they're open.
That's not the issue.
It's having a grocery store, that is
Right.
the issue. So, I think Aaron wants to say something.
Okay, gotcha, thank you.
Just in case there's feedback. On number 10, trees and green space, I wonder if, get the sense that people just want shade, and if we could coin it or frame it in terms of shade, because just as a cooling mechanism, and I just know that a lot of people go to the park we're working at just to, right this week, to get out of the sun.
So you wanted that choice added? To have more shade?
To have more shady groves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have more shade. But I think that also adds to Sarah Peelman's point about just having an other, in case somebody wants to write in something that we didn't think of, because we're already seeing that, like, we're all gonna miss something, right? So, yeah.
I do have a comment on number 5. You have very familiar, somewhat familiar, neutral, and not familiar at all. That neutral kind of throws me off. I'm not sure how you'd be familiar to a point where I'm neutral, I guess, is where I'm coming from. It's almost like that selection doesn't quite mash up with the other ones.
One of these things is not like the
Right.
other. One of these things just doesn't belong. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what neutral means either. It is kind of an odd thing to say.
So was the comment 5C?
Yes.
Neutral
Yes.
is confusing?
Yeah.
I just eliminated.
Okay.
Suggestion is just to eliminate it.
Or not very familiar?
Or not very familiar. You could do it on a scale, from 0 to 5. How familiar are you?
Sorry.
Yeah, we'll come up with a
Yeah.
different scale that's
Yeah.
a little more logical or regular than that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the comment.
But then you have to have 0 as a choice.
Yeah, you do have to have 0 as an option on that if you're going to have a scale. So somebody could select literally 0, like I know nothing. What is this thing called climate change?
There you go. Like 0 to 4, that's pretty good. 5 options for a Lagard scale.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Number 15, food systems. You say food systems. Are you interested in learning more about this topic? I think you have to define it.
Well, it's connected to the one before. So every issue has 2 questions. So climate resiliency has 2, food systems has 2, clean air has 2.
I still don't know if, it still might be helpful to have a definition. I mean,
Yeah, I
it
think-
says food systems, but then the question's only asking you about grocery stores. Is that the whole system?
Is that the whole, yeah?
I don't know, maybe it is.
Well, if I was wanting to plant peppers, E or F would be learning to make a garden in my backyard or in my front yard. So can we have like food security through food sovereignty that's the academic term, but what we really want is for people to say, how can I learn to plant a tomato for my family, right?
Well, and explaining, I guess, what food systems.
And it's related, Catherine, this is related to Pat's first point, like, these words, equitable mobility, okay, I get it, but even I had to think, well, what the hell is that?
Yeah, I think that
Like
needs a
to
different word as well.
Transportation, or walking, or or how do I get to work, or, and the food I eat, or, when we're talking to people that are not like us, we have to talk in a way that they understand, because they're very intelligent. They just need a different context or a different way of saying things, I think.
Less academic. Like, it might be good to have, kind of like we have the environmental priorities sheet, it might be good to have one that's just like definitions of what we mean by these words or these topics.
Yeah, and part of that is it's a good point, Sam. Like, we as, I think you mentioned it's at the Art House, you have talked to Groundwork Erie, even though you didn't mention it. And we're going to be translating some of this stuff, but, and helping people think this stuff through. So,
Did I not say Groundwork Erie? I'm so sorry.
No,
I totally missed that.
I'm just an egotistical jerk. It's fine, no problem. No, but just that helping the people that we're asking to do the outreach, like Art House, and maybe it's going to be at our West Bayfront or whatever, to give them a sense of we're not just top down talking about this from a climate change perspective. This is from your experience of, like, that's why I mentioned shade, or or just getting the bus on a Sunday to go work at Burger King. There is no bus on Sunday, so stuff like that.
Yeah, I think in the discussion that when you're having the sessions, also we should mention some of those things and what they are and go over what they mean.
Yeah.
Like,
the
not just have a
definitions.
list of definitions, but talk about each one of them, like each of these different categories or what we're talking
Yeah.
about as part of the talk before we hand out the survey as well.
Yeah, so the definitions don't need to be in the actual survey because they're part of the discussion beforehand. But if you're doing a tabling like what Bill is talking about doing, that's where I think having a handout with the definitions, or even just for people to look at as you're having that discussion can
Yeah, I
obviously be helpful too.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
both would be good.
Yeah.
Because some people, especially if we're talking about people who don't always speak English, some people can read other languages, but some people can hear them easier. It just depends on what they learned by listening or by reading.
You bring up a great point. What about translating the survey? Can we translate the survey into, do we have access to do that, or can somebody in the city do that, or?
We had discussions at our last meeting about
I'm
that.
sorry.
No, that's fine. No, at the P4P meeting, we had a discussion about that. There are translation services, but if they can get how quickly they can turn something like this around is a whole other thing, especially if we're looking at multiple languages. But I think that y'all were going to talk with Build about that, right, Porter?
So we have talked with USCRI that does offer translation services. Unfortunately, there is a cost with that, and that is something we're going to have to consider and just measure that against the the funding that we have. We are also speaking with them to get a sense like what languages we need to be aware of. What communities for whom English isn't a first language we need to be sensitive about. So we're definitely aware that there's we can't just have an English survey or English documents. We do need to be careful about other languages, the need of other languages. But we're still working on exactly how we'll be able to accomplish that while staying within our allotted grant funding. It's something we're working on for sure.
Porter, sorry to weigh in here, but I just have a question. Do you know if Google surveys can be through Google Translate? Like, I would assume if a Google form is created, if this was translated to an electronic copy, what our civic engagement team has done is then have a QR code, and the word survey is translated in 9 languages. So someone, or whatever the title of the survey is, that way they then can at least read it enough to go to the QR code that they can then translate on their own phone. I don't know if that's the best workaround here, but the question would be, is Google Forms able to be filtered through Google Translate?
I think that's something we can look at. I think we're also trying to be sensitive that, folks have different levels of technology that they have access to or that they're familiar with. So if we had something that was based on, pulling something up on your phone or something that's on a QR code, that might potentially make it challenging for some members of the community to access the survey. We could certainly go the route of punching the text into Google Translate, and which is not always perfect, but at least it gets it hopefully close enough that it can be legible to folks who do not speak English. But those are definitely can be some of the options that we're looking at. Because at the end of the day, what we're looking to have hard copies of the survey. So we need to find a way to translate those paper deliverables into different languages.
Any other comments? I know we have to get out of here, by 4:30? 4:15,
It's the
so.
latest that we can be here.
All right. But yeah, any other additional comments, concerns? I imagine we can always reach out if there's any more come out by email.
Yeah, so the P4P group is meeting tomorrow afternoon as mentioned. So, if y'all haven't had a chance to look at the survey, look at it tonight, and you can email any of us. So Sarah Peelman, Imus, Jenny Porter, and Kathy Rosdick, any of us with any kind of additional feedback that you may have before tomorrow at 1, 2? Something like that.
Late afternoon, I think.
Okay.
1 o'clock, you're right.
1 o'clock, all right.
And we'd also certainly encourage the members of the EAC to fill out the survey. We'd love to actually hear your thoughts on what some of the top issues or priorities are in the city. So,
I was also going to say, Sarah and Sam at the meeting tomorrow, hopefully you'll both be there. If you could just make sure that we captured everything that was discussed, because sometimes it was hard to hear the conversation. I don't know that we got some of the last few pieces of what you guys discussed, but just know that we didn't overlook it. We may not have heard it, so.
Sure thing.
Overlook.
right. I think the general thrust of the last conversation was making sure we don't use overly technical terms, or at least have some kind of page of definitions so folks who have the survey know what we're talking about. Is that kind of the general gist of it? But
Yes.
as Kathy said,
Yes.
we can certainly talk tomorrow and mop up anything that we missed.
I want to thank Porter and Kathy for your presentation. Thank you very much, and thank you for all your hard work on this.
Of course. Thank you for your time, and thank you for seeing us today. We had a good time.
Yes. Bye-bye.
On to the next item, item 2 under old business, potential EAC roles for LCAP creation with Jenny Tompkins.
I don't know that I need to be a standing agenda item. You guys might want to chat about your priorities, and then that could be integrated. Because I just Jackie called me and had sharing. I was kind of on the call last time, but kind of not. I was in 2 meetings at the same time, so sorry that you were trying to get me on Zoom, but I was in a different virtual meeting at the same time. But it was clear to me that you guys prioritized helping with the LCAP, and then that was reinforced by the survey results that Sam shared. So Jackie had just asked me, what are the types of things that you guys might consider doing or preparing or advising the city on? So I just came up with this bulleted list that's at the end of your packet in an email. I don't know that we need to go line by line. I don't know what would be helpful for this, but these were just things you could consider. A lot of where I was coming from was there's a limited amount of funding that Michael Baker International has to help us with phase 1. If you guys could be capacity adders to build up toward phase 2 and prepare the city for that additional work that'll have to happen, that'll be broader in terms of the partnerships, including who we're going to be working with now, but beyond that, city departments, other partners, other authorities, boards and commissions, etc. Could that be your role over the next year or so? I'll stop there though.
It's
It's part of the email.
sorry, it's part of the email, and it starts on page 2 of the email, and it goes on to page 3. Yeah. So I think Jackie just printed off the whole email since it contained all of it. So when you say like help, is that where the generate a list of staff AB? No, where is that last point that you made about, like, where is that summarized here?
I think this is in different parts.
Okay.
So the greenhouse gas inventory usually starts off a local climate action plan. That's usually the
Yep.
first section. So you guys could all make sure that data is up to date and it's ready to be visualized for a plan, because
Okay.
you could save a lot of money later if you guys are half the people here are academics, you know how to make charts and do all of the graphic work.
We never got the natural gas data.
That's another critical
So
piece.
it's a huge
is all the
piece
data
that's
there.
missing.
Okay.
So helping work with Sarah Peelman to make sure all the data is finalized and in order. Reaching out to other cities that have completed LCAPs could help with phase 2. Know what pitfalls to avoid when you're broadening those partnerships and convening focus groups and whatnot. Assist with the process we're in now, which I apologize, that's sort of out of order. Generating the list of partners that might make sense for phase 2, and then coming up with a framework to reach out to them. So what would you recommend to, if you all led that effort or there was a different consulting firm, what would the process be to reach out? Would it be focus groups? Would it be one-on-one interviews? Would you have additional public meetings? When would those happen? At what phases of the development of the actual plan? Keeping city council updated, that's something that I'm happy to help with too, but feels important that they know, because they're going to be the ones finalizing this plan once we get past development of it and the tactics. And then the funding stream piece is relevant because the city only has money for phase 1, which Porter just explained. That process then ends and there's no additional funding to get the plan up. There could potentially be additional money through the Partners for Places program that we have a planning grant for now, but that's not guaranteed. So is there work that you could do to help Michael Baker International and the city prepare that application or a different application for phase 2? Does that make sense of some of the things? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, which kind of actually ties with the conversation I think we were having towards the end of our last meeting, where I was suggesting that, like, if the LCAP is our focus, then what we could do is kind of assign people tasks each month, and then when we get together, we're reviewing what was done and then assigning new tasks, kind of as an approach. And it doesn't have to be one person to a task, like, right, like Mike and I could say, we want to tackle data, because we love data. Right, and so the two of us could work together on that one task, but something like that. And I think you've identified what some of those tasks are really nicely. You know, one person's job in between for a month could be simply making sure that they talk to the city council and keep them updated as to what's happening, right? Things like that.
And as a reminder, Councilwoman Flores is your liaison, but she's also council president, so unless you give her regular updates, she probably has so many other things coming through her inbox, so to have that personal relationship
Yeah,
would be good.
is very good, yeah, I agree.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Any more discussion on that topic?
Well, it seems to be kind of blending
yeah, I was
with Part
gonna
C.
move it into
Yeah.
Part C, so.
Yeah.
We'll move into the identifying priorities for the EAC. So I know
Joe,
we
get
had
started
a
off.
survey that went out, I don't know if it was last week or whenever.
Couple
but-
weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah, and so it looks like we identified several topics that were of interest to us.
So I
First
pulled
one,
these
okay.
topics from the prior discussion that we had had. So that's, I didn't leave a space, well, I did have a space in case there was anything that was missing, but nobody identified anything. But these were just pulled from our prior conversations.
Okay.
And so then I just asked everybody to rank. And then I did from 1 to 5, and then my plan was to sum up the totals, and then 5 being the highest totals then would be the things that got the most votes. And so that's all we have here. It's just what those totals are. 4, not $sign out of 7, 4. Where is, yeah. 4 out of 7 of us actually completed the survey. So we don't have to keep this, but I thought this might be a good place for us to start a conversation, is kind of knowing at least kind of where we were standing.
Mhm. Yeah, and this is a really good start. I mean, first thing in planning, you want to make sure you get the big things right and not spread ourselves too thin. So if we know what we're mostly interested in, like for instance, I'm interested in solar energy, but with the other items being higher, that's where we should direct our energy towards.
Yeah. And I do think the solar energy ties in with the local climate action plan, like we
Oh,
have,
yeah, I
that's
think they all
easy.
kind of fall under the local, the local climate action plan.
I guess the one thing that I would bring up from our last discussion was that we had talked, it seemed like we had kind of settled on the LCAP being our focus last time, but then I think, Mike, it was you that brought up the idea that like, that's a big thing and it might take us a while to get that fully developed. And so maybe we want to find some small wins that we could also work on in the meantime as we're doing the LCAP. But I don't know what that would be. So I'll just remind us that we were having that discussion, I guess.
Yeah, I remember, I think Jackie had said that's such a broad goal that it's probably way too big for us as a group to kind of tackle by ourselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The local climate action plan?
Yeah, because that's.
Yeah,
I
but
know
we
it's a-
definitely would welcome that to be, you to actively participate
Oh,
in
no,
that.
no. I'm not
As we
saying
get
that,
it
but
done.
it's.
Yeah, but I agree with Sam. It'd be
Mhm.
nice to have a couple smaller projects,
Mhm.
yeah, so you can have some things that you've accomplished while we're working on a long-term project at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, like, single-use plastics, litter mitigation, those kind of go together.
They do.
I mean, trees was rather high, and I have a bunch
trees,
of baby trees that
greenspacing.
were planted that need care. So I don't know I don't know what sort of activities you want to do, like have a bunch of tree care days to help all the baby trees get all their ties and stakes off and be mulched correctly, and or do you want to create policy change and, you know what I mean, make recommendations for, like, do we require like native plants and trees combined? Do you want to suggest there needs to be an ordinance that says you have to plant native trees, or you just can't plant invasives? Like, because I think I'm not sure if that's mentioned, if that's not in the ordinance, but I think it may be mentioned in the rules and regulations. But it's not a requirement, but it would be hard. I wouldn't recommend making it a requirement either, because there's other trees that are really nice trees just because they're not native, like the flowering cherry trees are beautiful. And so, I mean, that's a bad example, but I'm just saying, I don't know what exactly the group is interested in. If you want hands-on projects, or if you want
What is our, I don't know that our charge.
policy projects, or maybe it just depends on the topic. And you haven't decided either, like you're willing to do both. I don't know. Like, or do you only want to do things in the meeting and not have activities outside of the meeting?
Since you brought up trees, I've spent the last week dog sitting for a neighbor who lives on Holland Street between 33rd and 34th, and there's 2 giant dead ash trees in her backyard that look like they're about to collapse on the neighbor's property. Is that an issue that needs to be facilitated somehow to
It's an
help?
issue that needs addressed for sure, because what part of the problem is that I have jurisdiction to inspect trees and have oversight over all the trees in the city right-of-ways. So that's the space between the sidewalk and the street, and in the boulevards and in city parks and on public lands. But once the tree is on private property, that's a private property issue. I mean, I can still look at people's trees, but I have no authority over private property. So people tend to think, well, then code enforcement can help us with that because they enforce private property issues. But code enforcement doesn't have anything in their regulations that addresses trees. So even though someone can be fined for having grass too tall that just looks ugly, an entire dead tree could be in their yard and could fall on somebody in someone's house and kill somebody, and there's no way to address it right now. So that's a huge problem that definitely needs a solution on how can we help people get dead trees down, or at least like, I don't know. There needs to be some, I don't know what to do about it, because it would be like, it requires laws to be changed, I think.
Well, that's one of the things I was thinking. Why aren't we looking at existing ordinances and existing laws and possibly seeing how they can be enhanced and changed so that, and I think there's an awful lot of people that don't realize that, you know, what their responsibility is as far as trees or things of that nature. So, you know, some of these ordinances have probably been on the books for years and years and years and years, and possibly maybe this group needs to look at some of those ordinances and update them from an environmental standpoint.
And
I think that would be, personally think that would be a good priority.
Yeah, I will say, from my understanding of state law, the state preempts us to basically, the state does not permit municipalities to regulate silviculture, so trees are almost completely untouchable. Now, we might be able to do something with a health safety issue, you know, if the tree, you can tell, is physically dead
The
or dying.
bark's falling off.
Yeah, exactly, but yeah, unfortunately, I think the state law might preempt us to actually do something.
Well, maybe we
like
could
that.
ask the solicitor's office for advice to look into that, to see if there's anything that, and if there is something that can be done through, in what avenue do we have? Because we do have the quality of life ticketing, and that's only, I think, a $10 fine, but it makes people aware of a problem. And so I don't know, I mean, it doesn't, I don't know if that's an option, or, I'm just not sure. There hasn't been a good solution, because there's 2 areas of problems. One is the neighbor has a dead tree next door, and so neighbor 1 is afraid neighbor 2's tree is gonna fall on their property. But at the same time, neighbor 2 might, with the dead tree, also sometimes calls and wants help, the city's help to cut the dead tree down because they can't afford to do it, and we can't help them because we can't use public taxpayer dollars on private property. So can we even try to gather like resources that are to help people? Like, what avenues do they have to try to get their tree down? Because Penelec has a program through your electric bill. You can hire a tree company through them, and they spread it out over your bill for 36 months interest-free, but you have to be a person who pays your bill on time still. And so not everybody may qualify for that either. If they are low on income, they may not always be paying their bills on time every month, so they wouldn't qualify for that program anyway.
What businesses want dead trees to use? Charcoal, mulch?
The carvers, the artists, the people who carve things out of dead trees
Yeah,
sometimes.
so is there a way
Or
to
people
connect?
want them for firewood.
Yeah. They come and get the trees for people who can't afford to get them down, because that's the issue I saw today, Mike, down at the backyards of so many houses on East 7th. You can just see, but they have no wherewithal to get it done.
And it's a big topic, so I'm not saying we have to decide it today, but it's, we're just talking about it. Like, is that one of the topics you want to take on? Because
Yeah,
there
I
is a lot
brought
of
it up
things.
as an example of
Yeah,
an immediate concern that could be important and does affect lower income folks especially that can't afford to pay $1,000 to have that tree taken out.
and we need help solving
Right.
that problem. We
Yeah.
definitely need help solving that problem.
So
I
that's
think-
an example of a project that we could undertake and say, look, this is maybe important to do sooner rather than later.
It seems like, I don't know if we're using the microphone or not. It seems like the first 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, are at least, connected in various ways. I mean, single-use plastics and litter mitigation, and the plastic goes into the stormwater system, and, if the poisons that aren't impervious surfaces get soaked up by tree cover or whatever. So they're all sort of related. If we could, I don't know, work with Public Works or somebody to put these at the forefront of their work, I don't know.
Sarah, I'm going to ask, has anyone reached out to the engineering department about public education on stormwater? I know they handle the stormwater ordinance.
I don't think this committee has. I know Jenny's working with them and Amber, I believe, with Master Watershed Stewards to help set up, but we're a partner on their event.
Okay.
Wouldn't you describe it that way, or is it a joint event?
The city stormwater engineers agreed to do a stormwater walking tour this summer. So that's the type of event that the EAC would be great to promote. That would be in mid-July. But otherwise, Amber and the Master Watershed Stewards have been talking to them about a couple of different events because they have to do their 2 events annually for the MS4 program. But moving forward, I think the EAC would be a great partner to execute on those MS4, I just did the acronym thing. Municipal Separate Storm System, federal regulations under the Clean Water Act that the city has to abide by. There are 6 different tenants that they have to check every year in order to share that they show that they're caring about the stormwater management in the city and keeping water clean. So I think that's a great consideration under public education on stormwater. Are you helping the city fulfill its federal requirements? That'd be great.
But they're new, the program's new, and so the people there are new, and so developing an education program is new. So it's great that we've partnered with some other entities to help us start moving that program forward a little bit more aggressively than we have in the past. So they're trying, but they are definitely open for new ideas and would welcome any assistance the EAC could provide, whether just promoting events or, helping arrange new ones in neighborhoods or whatever for your different organizations,
Matt, I'm going to have to leave, but I thought that what Jen said about Jasmine Flores is our liaison, and all this stuff we're talking about, if we have a liaison, have somebody appointed from this group so that we could begin to talk to that person, Ms. Flores, whose sign is right behind your head, that would be good to get these conversations moving forward, especially for the summer events they're going to be having.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Can we consider that maybe we'll decide that long-term, we're going to look at the climate action plan, and at the next meeting, really kind of take a closer look at that and see what aspects we need to do something with, and maybe it's the greenhouse gases, that's the first piece. 2, we're going to do something on the trees, the dead tree thing. 3, stormwater education, and then just look at those issues besides the council liaison. Look at those 3 and see what we want to do with them. What does that sound? That seems like what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just want to add that, I personally, and people can feel free to disagree with me, personally don't think our role is to actually create public education events. Like, we're here to focus, I think, more on the policies, to advise the city council, definitely to help promote things within our own community, sure. But I don't think that, like, we should be doing like tree carrying, like, you know, the EAC. You know, like, we're not we're here to do kind of the grunt work, kind of behind the scenes, the unsexy ordinance kind of stuff is kind of personally what I think. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
I think, yeah, I agree with you. One thing that I think we might want to look at possibly is encouraging city agencies to do some public education. Like, you know, the engineers department do a public forum on stormwater so that people understand what the issues are, and maybe not doing the public education themselves, but I think there's a lack of public education in the part of this people in Erie about some of these topics, and maybe even, you know, trees, you know, and I don't mean to point the finger at Sarah at all, but, because I know you're a one-person department, but, you know.
One person, two departments.
One person, two departments, whatever, but maybe, you know, there's people that maybe they have no clue what they're supposed to do with trees on their property.
Yeah.
And maybe, and I don't know whether anybody would ever come to a meeting, or maybe you do it on, you know, you do some kind of a public forum and you do it on the city's, you know, website so that people can, I don't know. I'm just thinking that there's a lack of, I think there's a lack of understanding on the part of the people in the city about what it is that things like stormwater, trees, plantings, they just don't know, you know, they just don't know.
No, you're right, they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Aaron.
Bye, here.
Take care, thank you. All right.
He left it for you?
All right, well, with that being said, is there any other additional conversation, discussion on this? I know we're starting to push up towards our deadline.
Yeah, we are.
So, hearing none, we'll go to the next item, new business. No items under new business, so next item, adjournment. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We're done.